We have to come together. We have to design this. No one else is going to do it.
Now today, dozens gathered near PG&E's Humboldt Bay power plant to voice their concerns about nuclear threats. Now among the concerns is when and where the spent fuel would be transported at the Humboldt Bay power plant. The plant has been decommissioned for more than 30 years. The spent fuel is currently being stored underground in containers that PG&E says could withstand a major earthquake. Now this protest is just one of several that we have covered here at News Channel 3 in the last couple of months, and many of them involve the same people. News Channel 3's Andrea Marvin joins us live in the studio tonight with a closer look. Andrea.
Ben, although protests can be signs of the time, we have noticed many of them involve the same people. So we asked what all the fuss was about.
End nuclear power. Redwoods, not deadwoods. Signs seem to be popping up everywhere, protesting something. From school budget cuts to police brutality.
This night is hot.
To the widening of Richardson Grove. Even a tax cut rally had News Channel 3 on the scene.
Totals in at $3.9 billion.
And although some of the issues are different, some of the people remain the same. Same people involved with Cop Watch as people involved with Richardson Grove and nuclear roundups. So we asked, are these groups just anti-government?
Well, no. In fact, at 2:15 today, I'm announcing that I'm running for Congress against Mike Thompson.
Running against government to change government.
Well, I think that the climate crisis should be the central organizing principle for our economic and energy policies in the future.
But what about the future of Richardson Grove? And what does it have to do with today's protest against nuclear power plants?
We believe that one of the main manifestations of the nuclear madness that this country is involved in, we can stop it by stopping the road widening through Richardson Grove.
Yet are all of these protests a waste? Or is climbing roofs and holding signs working against several causes at the same time?
Corporate dominance from further coming into this area, to stop further militarization of this area, to prevent nuclear materials.
Because after all, one problem causes another, like standing up to authority while trying to save trees. Giving different groups reasons to protest against the same things.
So again, Ben, basically Richardson Grove Action Now was at the nuclear protests today, voicing that if the road was not widened, it could stop the possible transportation of nuclear fuel. And some of the members in that group are also involved with Cop Watch and have also been seen at other issue rallies as well. Back to you.
All right, thanks a lot. Andrea Marvin reporting for us tonight.
Okay, and then we have mass mailing and temporary political sign usage. And this is just for your information. Okay. So now I can do the oath of office. So I just have you raise your right hand, and when I'm done, just say if you do or not. I, Andy Caffrey, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties which I'm about to enter.
I do.
Okay. So I would have you sign right here.
Date it too?
No. Okay. And then right here.
It's been a long time since I took the oath to defend the Constitution. 1975.
Wow.
In Annapolis.
You're watching Free Speech TV's Newswire. I'm Marcy Miranda. In Northern California, a congressional race has garnered some national attention over the issues being played out by mostly Democratic candidates. To tell us why his platform is unique and why the race is unique in American politics, we've got Andy Caffrey. He's one of 9 candidates for California's District 2 race, and he's joining us from his home in Garberville, California via Skype. Hi, Andy. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Marcy. Nice to be here.
Great. So tell us a little bit, paint this picture. Why is this congressional race in California big on a national level? Why should we care in congressional politics on the national level?
Well, we have a number of really severe crises that the Democrats and Republicans seem to be incapable of dealing with. And I think that's because of entrenched corporate power. So what we have to do is find a way to get non-corporatists elected. And we live in a very unique district here on the north coast of California. It runs from the Oregon border down to the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's also registered 62% Democratic and 15% Republican. So if a person wins a Democratic primary here, they win the whole race. So what I've been doing is working to put together a project in which we combine community organizing with the net roots to reach as many people online and in person as the corporatist candidates reach by buying TV ads. And if we can find a way of succeeding at that here in this district, then it can happen in other districts. So after I'm elected in 2012, 3, 4, 5, 6 other people who are more famous activists, perhaps a Jim Hightower or a Winona LaDuke, can come in 2014, and we can really start to shut down the war machine, shut down the corporatist support, and start moving forward to deal with the climate crisis and the economy.
Okay, so we'll talk about corporate power and how that's playing out or not in your race in a little bit, but let's go back to some of the issues. You announced your candidacy for Congress in April on the eve of the Chernobyl anniversary, and climate change is one of the issues that you are really passionate about and have been. You've done some activism in the past around that. Talk a little bit about that and some of the other issues that you are tackling in your campaign.
Well, I've been following the climate issue for 30 years. In fact, I'm the world's first grassroots climate crisis organizer, and I coined that meme, climate crisis, back in 1996 as a response to Bill Clinton sending Al Gore to gut the Kyoto Treaty. I've been studying in particular the polar ice situation, which has been worrying me terribly for the last 15 years, and yet no one is talking about it. Right now, half of Greenland is melting. And if you look at the science that came out in 1990, it indicated we had to reduce our emissions 55 to 80% by the year 2000 or 2005. Instead, the emissions went up, and they're going to keep on going up unless something changes. So I am proposing that President Obama declare a national climate emergency, and we respond to the climate crisis in a similar way to how we responded to World War II, with a war effort to convert away from fossil fuels and away from nuclear as fast as possible, because these centralized forms of power generation are not efficient, and we have to go into the most efficient kind of program we can. And that means moving to rebuild strong, sustainable local economies designed around the bioregions, because the only way you can determine sustainability is ecosystem by ecosystem.
Yeah,
and
okay.
This is a program that's come out of green politics, and it needs to go forth to the American people right now.
Okay, so let's really briefly go back to that talk about corporations and corporate power. How many of the other candidates in your district are pursuing corporate power? Real briefly, we got about 30 seconds.
Well, actually, most of them are liberal, so they're not real big fans of corporatism, but they're running conventional campaigns, all of them, except for me.
Yeah, so it seems like there's a whole lot of a good future here for a campaign that's not run on corporate power for really grassroots levels. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think it's critical that we do it now because we don't have any more time.
Great. Well, that's all the time we've got for today. Andy, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Joining us was Andy Caffrey, a congressional candidate for Northern California's District 2. To read more about his campaign, visit his website at caffreyforcongress.org. For more of Newswire, visit us online at freespeech.org. Thanks for watching.
There are no jobs on a dead planet. If you're a 4-pack-a-day tobacco smoker, it matters whether you stop smoking 4 or 5 cigarettes a day or 4 packs a day. In 1990, there were reports issued by the EPA, by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the Woods Hole Research Center saying we had to reduce our emissions 50 to 80% below 1990 levels by 2005. We missed it, and we don't get any more time. In fact, the science since then shows that we underestimated it. rebuild our entire economic infrastructure, we put the fossil fuel proof and we're as fast as possible. This is no longer ancient world future. We care about our kids. We have to stretch our minds and go beyond this paradigm.
Hi, I'm Andy Caffrey, and I approve this message.
Hi, I'm Andy Caffrey, and I'm running for Congress. Are you like me? Are you freaked out about the climate crisis, the ecological meltdown, the collapsing economy, and the Republican dismantling of our democracy? I've been working on the climate crisis for 30 years, and now we're at a point where half of Greenland's ice sheet is sitting on a layer of water. If Greenland's ice were to go, we're looking at a 20-foot global sea level increase. Now, where I live in Humboldt County, a 1-foot sea level increase would wipe out our biggest city, Eureka. The Democrats and Republicans have failed us. Not only that, do you know who the biggest organized crime syndicate and terrorism network is? The Republican Party. And the Democratic Party is the second biggest. These people are monsters. They are not going to solve our problems. We have to solve our problems. But when you look at Congress, how do we do that? How do we beat the corporatists? How do we beat their money? We have to invent a new way. We have to find a way that we can elevate our natural community leaders into these positions of power in the government. I'm trying to invent that way right here on the north coast of California. When you think about what $1 million buys a corporatist candidate, it's basically a bunch of TV ads that reach people for about 30 seconds. Well, what if we could use the internet and our community organizing to reach as many people? We could eliminate the advantage of the money. And that's what we're doing right now. I've been running since a couple years ago, and I've been in 4th place this last year with a $10,000 campaign. The millionaires are down at 1%. My 8% to their 1%. Their $500,000 to my $10,000. Something is working now. So what do we have to do? Can we just solarize a few more homes? Make our cars more efficient? No. 30 years I've been working on the climate crisis. 20 years ago, the science said we had to reduce our fossil fuel emissions 50 to 80% by 2000 or 2005. Well, we didn't do it, and we don't get any more time. And if we don't do something now, we're looking at places like Greenland breaking up. We're looking at the Amazon catching on fire. We're looking at the tundra releasing methane. We're looking essentially at the end of the world for our children. Now, this particularly moves me because I grew up in the 60s. I watched what happened in Vietnam. The so-called greatest generation, the people who won World War II and the people back home who made that possible, also committed the greatest betrayal. When Richard Nixon, LBJ, Congress decided to draft American troops, their parents just let them do that. And 55,000 of them were killed by these monsters. They didn't bother to learn about Vietnam. They didn't bother to learn about our history. And they just let them go. Well, we're doing the same thing now. My campaign manager is 25 years old, and I look at her every day, and I see the rest of the world ignoring the climate crisis. And I'm looking at her future, and I see it's black. So what we have to do now, we only have one choice. We have to reduce our fossil fuel emissions as fast as humanly possible. And the only model in our history that works to do that is the way we responded in World War II. So I'm calling for President Obama to declare a national climate emergency and for the nation to turn to a war effort to convert away from fossil fuels and nuclear as fast as possible. And to do that, globalization isn't going to work anymore. So that means that we have to meet our needs as close to home as possible. All of them. Food, clothing, shelter. We have to rebuild our infrastructure in the United States. But we have to do it in a way that's sustainable. How do we decide? How do we do that? We do that by assessing bioregions. Bioregions are ecological zones. And it's the only way you can determine if something is sustainable, is if it overtaxes that ecological system or not. So bioregionally, Americans have to come together as communities and decide how do we go about reducing our emissions 80% in, say, 10 years, because that's about as fast as we can do it. Well, we do it by getting behind a campaign I call New Green America. It has 7 fundamental proposals that I think all Americans should get behind. And we need to start elevating our citizen politicians to get behind this. It means the climate crisis becomes national security threat number 1. We have to deal with it that way. It is a national security threat. Ask the CIA, ask the Pentagon. They take it seriously, but not the politicians in Congress, not the president. So that means we have to redirect trillions of dollars away from war, away from the war on drugs, and we have to get it back from the rich to rebuild our infrastructure all over the country. We have to become locally sustainable. We have to look at food security, water security, and we have to have a safety net that's going to take care of everybody to go through such a change. So that means Medicare for everybody. It means the best schools in the world once again, like California used to have. It means free college tuition. It means that our old people and our young people don't have to worry about being taken care of by everybody else. The third part is to retreat the American empire. We have bases in 150 countries. We run the rest of the world so that we can get the products that we get as cheap as we get them. When we're going sustainable, it means going local. It means that system goes down. Part of that process means number 4. We have to end corporate personhood. Corporations are not people. If you can't throw them in jail, if they can't pay the penalties for being a citizen, then they aren't people. Also, we have to legalize marijuana. I live in Humboldt County. I am a medical marijuana patient myself. And I'm really upset that people are still in jail. Hundreds of thousands of Americans in jail just because of marijuana. And their children are suffering. They're getting PTSD. Marijuana legalization is well overdue. In fact, it would be a horrible travesty if the hippie generation died off without legalizing marijuana first. Then we also have to punish the criminals who brought us here, starting with President Bush and the Supreme Court justices who made him our president. Henry Kissinger, the people from the Vietnam War era, the people from Iran-Contra, these people have got to be punished, just as if they were any of the terrorists that we want to prosecute. So we need to do what Vincent Bugliosi said. We need to prosecute President Bush for terrorism and for murder. And last, we need electoral reform. We need to get away from these machines. We have to get corporations out of the electoral process. And we have to do things like use instant runoff. We have to do a lot of things so that third parties can have more influence on our government. Right now, it's just the Dems and the Republicans. I've been a Green for 30 years. I'm registered Democratic. I'm doing that because the country needs to hear what green politics is about. They need to understand what ecotopia now means. That's what the war effort's about. It's about making things as green as they can be. Like I said, a new green America. So I hope you will help me start this movement. The Tea Party isn't the only option for America. The Democrats and Republicans do not define the spectrum of possibilities. There are ways that we can meet our needs and do it in an ecologically sustainable way. So I hope you will help me. I'm running for Congress. The election is on June 5th, and I need your vote. I'm Andy Caffrey. Thank you so much.
The Expressions program is one of those wonderful programs in which we bring scholars and researchers and community activists and politicians to come to campus and to discuss issues that have global and regional significance. And tonight, the event that we're addressing, of course, deals with what's taking place here in the new district. So it should be a very, very exciting evening, and we are very proud to host this event. And the person who will be conducting the process is Michael Krasny. And Michael Krasny, of course, is with KQED. And he is part of the Dominican family. He received not too long ago an honorary doctorate from Dominican University.
I had planned to introduce each of the candidates with fabulous biographies of their many accomplishments, but as you can see, there are 7 of them. And there are so many issues to discuss that what I'm going to do is simply introduce them. They all have campaign websites that are very easy to find, and there's literature at the back of the room if you would like some more in-depth information about them. The candidates are, and Marin County Supervisor Susan Adams, Dr. William Courtney.
Nope.
Oh, there, I'm sorry, I missed you. Green candidate, Andy Caffrey, sorry. California State Assembly member Jared Huffman, businesswoman Stacy Lawson, Petaluma City Council member Tiffany Renee, and activist author Norman Solomon. I want to thank you for the entire room for agreeing to participate tonight. Thank you so much. Tonight's event is not a debate. It is a forum. It is a discussion of the pressing issues that we are facing today. And who better to moderate that discussion than the articulate, thoughtful, and thought-provoking Michael Krasny. Michael is an author, professor, host, and senior editor of KQED's award-winning news and public affairs program, Forum. We are beyond thrilled that you agreed to participate, and it is my great pleasure to turn it over to you, Michael.
Thank you all for being here, and thanks to Dominican for hosting it. It's true that I was given an honorary doctorate, which I'm very proud of. Although I once said that honorary doctorates come in one of two ways. Either you give a lot of money or you do a lot in the community. And as you can see, I'm here tonight because I don't give a lot of money. I give what I can. And the fact that you're here says a good deal about your commitment. We have a new district, of course, and we have some really fine candidates. It's an embarrassment of riches in many ways. This seat is open, and it goes from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way up to the Oregon border. Now that you've been introduced to the candidates, I just want to make one quick emendation, which may not seem important, but a number of years ago, I passed on the mantle of senior editor of Forum to Dan Zoll, and he is now senior editor, much to my pleasure and appreciation. I thought I'd begin by, we were going to do this not necessarily, as Carol said, with candidates sparring or fighting or anything along those lines, but just having questions thrown at them by me, and also follow-up. And I'm going to ask each of them to give responses of about 2 minutes apiece, 2 to 3 minutes apiece. And the first thing I'd like to do, and this is in lieu of, this is who I am and this is what I stand for, I want to ask each of you to, here's a hypothetical I'm going to put to you, and I'll begin, I'm sorry, you're the first of the alphabet, Susan, so we'll begin with you. And then we'll come back and begin with Norman next, and then we'll mix it around. But here's the question. You're going to represent this district, you're going to Congress, and you're going to face some pretty formidable opposition probably, given the Tea Party and given certainly politics that are not necessarily in harmony with this county. You want to have one piece of legislation as a priority, a piece of legislation that you believe you can really carry for this new district, that would be even vital for this new district, and realistically you think is viable. What would it be? Andy Caffrey, can I go to you next?
Well, I have more of an FDR approach as well, so I see it more as a combination of bills. I got involved, so what I'll tell you is the first bill that I would introduce is a ban on the use of tasers, pepper spray, and paying compliance on nonviolent protesters. But if you ask the most important one, it would be a new reconstruction that would redirect trillions of dollars back to our communities to build a post-fossil fuel, post-nuclear, sustainable society everywhere in the country designed around bioregions. That's the only way you can design a sustainable society, is ecosystem by ecosystem. For 30 years I've been working on the climate issue. For 30 years I've been working on trying to get people to understand the ecotopian alternative, green cities, understanding bioregionalism, permaculture, but the Democrats and the Republicans have better things to do than to save the planet. What we have to do now, since we've ignored this problem for 30 years, is integrate the solutions to the economy with solutions to the ecosystem. Because 70% of the planet is being used for humans right now. There's no more planet to use. In fact, we may have to even consider the whole concept of economic growth. Because economic growth has the same ideology as cancer. Unlimited, undifferentiated growth is good until the body is dead. And that's exactly where we're going. We have to change gears. I've been an organizer for my entire life. I've sacrificed career, money, property, because I've been studying this and I've seen it, and I've seen people suffering from it. Up where I live, I've seen Charles Hurwitz come in and take over the Pacific Lumber Company, a 100-year-old sustainable family company, and destroy the old-growth forest ecosystem. They've shut down the mills. There is no Pacific Lumber Company. There's no old growth mills anymore because there's no more product. This is what's happening. 90% of the large fish stocks are gone. When are we going to address these things?
Andy Caffrey, let me interrupt. Thank you. I'd like again to remind everybody, this is a bill that you would sponsor. This is the priority for you. This is a kind of triage, as far as you're concerned, that would serve this district best and that would be realistically viable to get through this House of Representatives. Can I go to you on this, Tiffany Renee? Andy Caffrey, we just concluded the summit talks in South Africa and the summit talks on climate change. And the real question continues to loom about how we get countries like India and China to go along. And what I mean by go along with essentially a program of serious reductions of greenhouse gases and putting chlorofluorocarbons into the atmosphere. In other words, what should the U.S. role be in terms of other nations that feel that they are entitled now to pollute the atmosphere just as we did?
We have to take responsibility for our historic contribution. It's not the greenhouse gases of India and China and the third world that's causing the problems that we're having right now. Greenland, West Antarctic ice sheet, they're melting. Half of Greenland is melting now, and it's because of our greenhouse gases, the greenhouse gases of Europe, the greenhouse gases of Japan and Australia. Once we take responsibility for that and say we are going to do what we owe the rest of the world, even if it means our corporations are going to have to lose money in the fossil fuel sector, we have to do that. So setting an example is what we have to do first and foremost, and pay our bill.
Andy Caffrey, there are these savage budget cuts, of course, on the state and the federal level. Just talked about them on the air this morning, in fact. And Gene Ross, who is in charge of the California Budget Project, said the population's growing and the amount of revenue is diminishing. Let me ask you, just from your perspective, how you would deal with that fact that you not only have to create jobs, but you have to do something about this economic engine, which doesn't seem to really be operating full throttle anymore. And you've got more of a population, and you've got more and more cuts. That's the reality.
Yeah, but that's only one way of looking at reality. I've been reading James Galbraith's book, The Predator State, recently, and he points out that the desire to cut deficits now is a disaster. Now, when a person's poor, that's not when they should be paying off their debts. That's when they should be getting support. You pay off your debts once you've gotten out of your bind, okay? We are going not only into a double-dip recession, the economy is collapsing. We haven't had peak oil kick in yet, and we've done nothing to reduce our fossil fuel emissions regarding the climate crisis. Like I said, I've been following this issue and working on it for 30 years. Do you know who the first president was to pass a bill to deal with the climate crisis? President Obama. Let's not forget that it was Al Gore who was sent by Bill Clinton to Kyoto to gut the Kyoto Treaty. So what we have to do is have, as I've suggested, a national, I think President Obama has got to declare a national climate emergency. We have to rebuild our infrastructure. If you look at the two most important questions anybody should be asking right now is how much do we have to reduce our fossil fuel emissions, and how much time do we have? I went through the Oakland firestorm. I lost everything, and that was because of the climate crisis. I know what too late is. Regarding health care, I got involved in working with the homeless 4 years ago because 3 people died, okay? Now, the state budgets that people like Assemblyman Huffman sign are killing the people in my town. They don't have dental care, they don't have glasses, and their mental health is cut. All of the money that we don't have in our community has been sucked over to the state. So what has to happen is we have to start designing how we meet our needs and come up with budgets for that. I propose something I call Great Conversion Conferences, where you, in your community, start to get together with the ecotopian visionaries, the climate crisis activists, the peak oil people, labor, and agriculture. And you start to sit down and say, how can we get off of fossil fuels as fast as possible around here? How do we design our economy so we don't destroy the planet?
Well, forgive me, Mr. Caffrey, I'm going to have to come in here just in the interest of time, and I want to go to Stacey Lawson now, who has worked as a businesswoman. Let me take that point then, and we'll hear. from the two who haven't talked yet, Dr. Caffrey, or Andy Caffrey and Dr. Robert Courtney, let's talk about political financing and so forth. Andy Caffrey, go to you on this. What would you envision should go on other than the kinds of things we've been hearing about public statements and recusing and so forth with respect to getting political funds once you're in Congress?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, let me put it to you more directly. If you're in Congress and you need to support your congressional staff, you need to get money from different sources, you want to run again. I mean, there are all these things that contribute to taking money and have habitually and characteristically contributed to people in Congress taking money from the trough of all kinds of contributors. Where are you?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. I'm inventing a new way of getting elected, and it's because we live in this district that it's possible. If you look at what's really going on and consider our plight, there are people in Congress who are running it. All 41 senators, Republican senators, meet the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, which is a kind of psychopathy, okay? So I'm going in there to fight these people. I'm going in with you. One of the things I'm going to do is after every day of Congress, I'm going to whip out my camcorder and tell you what went on, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, what legislation to be scared of, and what to support, okay? There's a whole shift that has to happen here. Now, how could someone like me get elected? I'm what we used to call in the 60s a poor person, okay? Now, the way to do it is to reach as many people using the internet and our community networking to reach the people in our district as the corporatists can reach with their $1 million worth of TV commercials. That's the challenge. Can we do that? Well, yeah, I think we can. Starting with Howard Dean on through President Obama, the Netroots community has become extraordinarily effective. So what I'm doing now is I'm working to invent a model that other people, more famous than myself, and people like Jim Hightower or Winona LaDuke, Aaron Brockovich, that these people can then get elected in key districts too. So picture this, 10 or 20 Michael Moores, Amy Goodmans, and Andy Caffreys on the floor of Congress 4 years from now. Things will change. You know, I mean, 5 of the people here have said they want to fulfill the legacy of either Lynn Woolsey or Mike Thompson.
You
That's
kill the
not gonna cut
Occupy
it.
movement. That would kill the Occupy movement. That would just get rid of it. Exorcise it immediately. But let me move forward on that note because I want to hear from Andy Caffrey, who's going to conclude here.
Of all the candidates here, I'm the only one who has lived and or worked in all 6 counties of the district. I consider some of the other candidates to be tourist candidates, Highway 101 candidates, San Francisco Bay Area candidates. Right here, you guys have a median income of over median income of over $85,000 a year. Where I live, it's $35,000. It's really different. I've been a part of the Occupy movement for over 25 years. I've been a tree sitter. In Earth First, we occupied Maxam property. We occupied the forest. And we have been occupying our homeless areas for a long time too. The homeless situation is something I've worked on for 4 years. 4 years ago, we had 3 people die, including a couple of American Vietnam War veterans. So I got involved out of scratch. I put my campaign aside for 3 months, and using KMUD, our community radio station, calling up a show every Friday and telling folks what was going on with the homeless, I raised the money and we organized a homeless shelter for 2 months, and we saved 3 people's lives. So when I go to the Occupy movement, I'm there with the people who've been there all along and saying, well, you know, how about some solidarity with us? You want us to help you guys, the middle class who've lost? Yeah, we're there with you. We've suffered too. We know exactly what you're going through, and we're with you. But you guys have got to start looking at the bigger picture as well. And, you know, it's well and good to be an occupied tourist and drop in for a couple of hours for a photo shoot, but, you know, this is serious stuff. All of us have not been doing enough for the poorest of the poor in this country, the least among us. And it's time that we use this Occupy to do 2 things. I think the next stage is we have to build solidarity. Okay, the middle class who have lost their homes, they should start to help out the poor who have lost their homes and build their solidarity. You asked about the Oakland the occupation. In general, I would support that. But I heard a little comment this morning as I was getting ready to drive down here that there were some problems with the union. The union wasn't very happy with that. I think it's very important for Occupy to work with the unions. Okay, so solidarity is the next place where we have to go, and the next place after that is where people like me start to get elected. People that we respect as community leaders of our own, not people who've made careers as politicians, not business people, not lawyers, not the richest of our community, but the people who have always been there, the people that we go to when we need help.
Andy,
That's
just
what
let me,
we need to do.
Let me thank you. Bring it to a stop here because I want to go through a number of questions. I also want to clarify a point because we did a program on this with a spokesperson for the ILWU, the main union for longshoremen, and there was a lot of dissension over how many rank and file members were out there as opposed to how much the union was actually in condemnation. You're talking about the trucker union as well as the ILWU, but anyway, that's just an important footnote that I felt compelled to add. Now what I'm compelled to add is just questions that have come, and let's do this. Let's do a kind of we'll start with you, Susan, go to Norm, then we'll start with Norman and go down to you with questions from all of you. And I'll ask you to be precise and be succinct, about 2 minutes, answer the questions. It's kind of a lottery. You'll get a question here from someone in the audience. It'll have to do with presumably important matters. In fact, I've looked through these cards and they all are important matters, and they're important matters, important enough that the people wrote them down. All right, let's keep that pithiness here as best we can, and we're going to you next, Robert Caffrey. Member of the audience writes, education is any country's largest role, actually quoting Tiffany Renee, but the question is phrased as follows. How can we better provide more education, and what can we do about the education system here? There is no legislation, there's new legislation here in California which negatively impacts education under the budgetary rules, asking specifically about California to enhance education here, and certainly something that's very important to most of, if not all of us.
How specific a question are you asking?
Well, I'm reading it off of the card here. Let me reframe it. What would you do in terms of priorities where education is concerned?
Okay, well, again, part of this whole overall war effort to convert involves an expanded social safety net. I think America can have the best schools in the world, and that should be our priority. You know, there are a couple of things that are used to keep us on the hook. When I went to college, I had to pay $200 and some odd a quarter. Now people are paying tens of thousands of dollars to go to college. Why? Because they'll be happy servants for a corporation for 30 years afterward. Same thing with mortgages, okay? I think it's insane that we're paying for health care in the wage stream. It makes all of the workers have to compete to accept the least amount of health support, and all of the workers to try to get the cheapest thing they can get. We need to pull it out of there. Likewise with property taxes and schools. Why is it that Watts has crappy schools and Beverly Hills has wonderful schools? Because Beverly Hills has a lot more to put in there. We need to fund this nationally. We need to have a national education initiative because that is the heart of our future.
Thank you. Let me conclude on that note. And let me say that I think, well, a couple of things. First of all, I want to again extend thanks to those who sponsored. I actually got through virtually every question that was submitted, so that should make, I hope, those people who submitted the questions happy. What makes me very pleased is the fact that I think that you all, and you're obviously concerned citizens being here, have had a good picture of these candidates, where they stand on many of the issues. Now it's up to you to exercise your franchise, which I hope you will do with intelligence and illumination. Let me thank all the candidates and thank all of you as well.
It's amazing what we've done here. We not only came on the road that we've been prohibited from, we've come all the way up to a place that even Sierra Club and Audubon Society could not get into, or could only get into with letters from their lawyers. Of course, they wanted rides up the hill. So anyway, this song was written to, I was dreaming one night, And I heard a noise outside the window. Came out of bed. Suddenly I was out here sleeping. There's a full moon like it was the other night on Lookout Point. The clouds came across the moon, and then when I came back out, I saw these black objects up by the moon. A bunch of them. There's about 13 or 14 of them. And off in the distance, a little
Wow.
Whoa, man, that's cosmic. Here we go. Let's see. Two astronomers went riding out one dark and cloudy day. It was low visibility. There was this edge effect where the trees met the clouds, and they had to move the telescope because it just wasn't working. And these are trained scientists. Go figure. So anyway, two astronomers went riding out one dark and cloudy day. Went upon Mount Graham, they rested as they rode along their way. Coming up Swift Peak, yeah, when all at once a mighty herd of ultralights they saw flying towards the telescopes. There were 17 of them with slingshots that were drawn, singing yippee-ki-yay, yippee-ki-yo, snow busters in the sky. You know what else? These were solar ultralights. Well, their eyes were big, their smiles immense, their EF shirts were bright. Well, they left Tucson at sundown and they rode on through the night. Yeah, one called to the astronomer as she was flying by. I got a pocket full of marbles, got 'em for my kid. Yeah, and a 2020 high. Here we go, singing yippee-ki-yay, yippee-ki-yo, snow busters in the sky. Yeah. And with a spool of surgical tubing, this ultralight regatta. Oh wait, we gotta tell the sheriff's this story. Now this is a true story. Back when this battle was still in its early stages, maybe 1987, 88, early stages before construction started, that is. U of A won a court victory. And to celebrate, they had a party at the University of Arizona. Now this story illustrates the sensitivity they have for diversity. It illustrates their understanding of the need to maintain this earth as powers greater than us created it. And at this party, they brought a piñata. Now, piñata is a custom in the Southwest. Probably had no Hispanics there, or their quota, probably. See, they don't understand diversity. So they brought a piñata, and this piñata was shaped and formed like a red squirrel. A red squirrel. Now what you do with a piñata is you take a stick and you swing it and you smash it, and everything inside comes flying out. And they say they're looking for God up here. I don't know. Go figure. Okay. Oh. With a spool of surgical tubing, this ultralight regatta formed a giant slingshot and loaded it with a rodent-shaped piñata. Yes, the pride of the university and the Vatican as well was about to meet a squirrel. Yeah, that would send it straight to hell. Singing yippee-ki-yay. We've only got 60 years, so we better get that solar ultralight happening real soon. Oh, thanks, man.